ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hi there, and good evening to this Points of View edition on Thursday night. We have a panel with some of our regulars. We've got Lucy, we've got Yasmin, and we've got Maud, myself, JP, and we're going to do one of our old favourite topics on Teacher Talk Radio. No, we're not going anywhere near toilets after last time, talking about toilets has really generated a lot of traffic. We're not going to go into the culture wars element of this because that's a rabbit hole that the gutter press seems to want to go down, but we are going to look at uniform. The old horse chestnut of uniform. And in particular generated the comment from the Bridget Phillipson when she was on radio, and she was asked the question about uniform policy and gender expression. And that was, she was suggesting boys should be allowed to wear skirts in primary schools. Many's a Scotsman right now saying, that's fantastic, we can wear kilts now in primary schools. But all joking aside, it did generate some of the culture war comments, and it did sort of then start the sort of juices flowing of what's the function and nature of uniform. And it brings us to what we're going to discuss tonight is uniform out of date? Can we update uniform? Can we look at uniform changing with the times? As a school in Derby has actually done, they have just basically redesigned their uniform to be more active and more in line with what they think is relevant in the 21st century. And much like many things in education, there are traditions, there are long-standing traditions. Uniform seems to be one of them. So she was put on the spot when she said about her long-awaited sort of white paper. She was asked about that, and there was a sort of big backlash about it. And some of the press made a big thing about, how dirty, boys in skirts at primary school. And we're not getting into that. We don't want to go down that sort of route of that particularly. But what we are looking at is this concept of uniform. So being a history teacher, let's give a bit of a history of uniform. It's actually England that invented the school uniform, believe it or not, 1552, and it was Christ Hospital and around the Tudor times. And the school uniform came in as a result of that. We also had, if you want to count, 1222, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the monastic colleges when they have the culpa culsa, which is basically the sort of monastic robes, a bit like robes of Batman. So your original school uniform had monastic and also medical schools. Now, during the Industrial Revolution, you had these sort of charity schools set up, those altruistic charity schools by the nonconformists, and they sort of had school uniforms, which becomes sort of the blazer, the tie, and many of those that you'd considered, which are now considered old-fashioned, which are considered traditional. Because of the British Empire and, of course, the success of the British education system, school uniforms are in 75% of countries and widespread throughout most of the Southern Hemisphere. And it's only really North America and most European countries that have more relaxed policies on school uniforms. But British Isles, Britain, Ireland, etc., still has the majority of schools with some sort of school uniform, which contain your blazer, your tie, and that leads to some of these problems that they may say in the future about this concept of gender roles. But another thing to throw in here is the difference between a uniform and a dress code, because one of the functions of education is to, prepare students for the future life of work. And one of the proponents of people who say that uniform is good because that gets them ready for work. Well, actually, ironically, many places now don't have uniforms. What they do have is dress codes. So we're either going to explore the difference between a uniform and a dress code. And to just give you sort of a flavor of what a dress code versus uniform is, a uniform, according to Nathan Joseph, as commentator, is clothing that considered serves a group element, certifies an institutional legitimacy, individual relative positions, and can suppress individuality. In other words, everybody's wearing exactly the same. There's no choices. Conversely, a dress code is less restrictive and focuses on modesty, discouraging antisocial fashion statements. So we're talking things like, for instance, no ripped clothing, no logos, no tattoos. And when you look at a lot of modern employers, they have dress codes, not actually uniforms. So there is a societal shift away from restrictive uniforms and more in dress codes, with the exception, of course, of military, police, and the sort of services like that, who still, of course, insist upon uniformity and hence uniforms. Again, there's those who promote uniforms would say it works for the military, it works for the services, whereas others want to relax that and be a bit more liberal. And I do think you can start to see the sort of different groups of people who are for uniforms and those who are against uniforms. Lastly, there's another aspect to this as well, which is really not being explored, and I'm keen for the panelists to explore this, is the fetishization and the whole thing about school uniforms and the awareness now that school uniforms themselves are considered to be, well, it's the whole dressing up in school uniforms as adults. And what the sort of research which is shown, and this research, when I looked into it, really sort of shocked me. And again, I've been looking for the panelists to sort of to flesh this out. The costume ideas of school uniforms, the sexy schoolgirl stuff, which in some cultures is seen as kind of pretty cool. And to be honest with you, I find weird. But this whole idea of, 35-year-olds going to Amsterdam, getting absolutely hammered and dressing up as schoolgirls, when you can't get them into a school uniform and they're 15, and you can't get them out of a school uniform and they're off, gallivanting around the world, I just don't understand it. I really don't. But here is the thing. Here's the rub. 2/3 of children questioned in a survey, they said that they had received unwanted sexual attention in public, and 35% had said they'd been touched, groped, or grabbed without their consent. And those experiences obviously inform basically how women perceive their dress. And I think what I want to sort of get through is the uniform part of the cultural problem that we have about how women are perceived and how men are perceived, hence the statement about boys in skirts at primary school. And of course, at what age do we then reinforce those sort of boys and girls, sort of what we say stereotypes? So I'm going to open to the panel after everything I've just thrown out there. A couple of things to get our heads around, and a couple of things we can sort of hopefully get stuck into. Will anybody want to open with any of that whatsoever?
I just want to say, firstly, what an intro. But yeah, I'll pass over to you. You can go ahead.
Well, thank you for the historical side of things, because I had no idea the uniform was that old, the tradition of the uniform. For me, it was a bit of a shock the first time I visited a British school in 2004, because this is out of my lived experience. As you said, in Europe, continental Europe, we do not wear uniforms, whether it's Germany, Italy, France, Belgium, So for me, it was always quaint, traditional, exotic, dare I say. I realize it has a very long history, so it has a lot of meaning for many people. So I wanted to ask you how you view it, having been brought up in this environment, in this culture.
Well, I would say, as a kid that grew up poor, I loved the uniform because it was just one less thing to think about. You just looked like everyone else. I'll be so honest, like when I was at school, maybe not always, I feel like this is more secondary. I feel like at primary school, I really loved things like non-uniform day, and like there were so many different activities where you'd have the opportunity to dress up, and I actually loved having the chance to do something different. But I don't know, maybe it's the awkward teenager stage, I don't know. But when I was in school, uniform was just easy. But again, a lot of my views as a child were shaped by the fact that I didn't know any different. Every school around me had a uniform. It just wasn't something that I questioned. So, but when I got to sixth form, I stayed in the same school. I felt really weird going from wearing the same uniform for 5 years to suddenly coming in September and having to make all my own decisions. Yes, I did like it, but also, I don't know, it was just, I feel like it can make you more hyper visible, or I feel like what I like about uniform a lot of the time is that, I mean, it's hard to say it's like giving thought to people who don't have a lot of money or parents who can't afford it, because uniforms aren't cheap either. So I would say I like uniforms. I just don't like when schools do that thing where you have to get the blazer from like a really specific place, or like the trousers have to be from here, or the shoes have to be from there, or everything's got a logo. Like when I was in school, you could just buy the logo for your blazer from the school uniform shop that always had a really long queue in August. Well, the last weekend in August, actually, not all of August, but you could just buy, and so you could just you could get your school shirts from anywhere. You could kind of get your PE kit from anywhere. You could get your trousers or your skirt from anywhere. That, like, I feel like it was a bit different. Whereas now, I don't know, the last time I saw someone like ironing on their logo onto their blazer. I'm just kind of going on a tangent here, but I mean, when I look back as a child who grew up quite poor, I mean, I always had uniform. Whatever I was told to get, my mum would have got it anyway. Even if it was non-school uniform, I'm sure my mum would have had me in non-school uniform, whatever. But I do feel like my perception of it in school was it's just what you do. You know, I've got a lot of family. Like, I'm from a country with a huge diaspora community. I've got cousins all over the world, and whenever they've come to visit us, a lot of the time, the thing they've always commented on is, why is everyone dressed like they're in the army? Like, why are there loads of children just dressed like they're in an army? Because they just see loads of kids in school uniform, and they used to find it really weird, you know. But that's just normal to me. Like, I was born in London. You're just in uniform. It's also normal to just compare your uniforms and to call some people's uniform ugly, and, you know, think other uniforms are better or whatever. But I couldn't imagine England not having uniforms. I genuinely couldn't.
I think it's really good that you mentioned the cost, Yasmin, because I just went on the website today and I checked the cost of buying a full uniform in year 7 at my current school, which is an inner city London school, with sometimes in a year 7 we have up to 65% children on free school meals. So the total cost with the PE kit and also the plastic water bottle with the logo that they have to buy comes to £180.
That's crazy.
And then I compared it to my daughter's school, who is in a more suburban, leafy North London school, and that's £211. So
Whoa.
it's not cheap. But I understand that having had one child in a state school with a uniform and one child without a uniform, I actually spent less money on the child who had the uniform, because the other one wanted to buy brands like all these friends and wanted Nike shoes, you know. So as a parent and as a European who never had uniform, I noticed that I was spending more money when we didn't have a uniform.
No, totally. And sorry to just jump back into that again. You know, another thing is, even when I was in school, the kinds of clothes I was interested in buying, which were like fashionable at the time, were so much cheaper. Like, I find it so outrageous now. I've got younger siblings. I've got, you know, cousins. I've got a lot of family. I teach school children. You know, the fact that the average like boy now will wear like a £200 tracksuit, and that's just one outfit. You know, like, I find that crazy. Like, imagine how many of those would people have to buy? Like, I don't know what I'm arguing for here. I don't know if I even support or I'm against uniform. I just don't know any different, you know. But I mean, everything is expensive. But
I mean, that's the thing, that they did try and limit that, and one of my bugbears is the rebranding of school uniforms by multi-academy trusts. With everything was rebranded, and it became extreme. So I agreed with the current government when they wanted to limit, for instance, the number of items. However, what happened to our school is that in 2010, myself and the student body, with the head students at that time, fought hard to get a polo shirt for the summer because of classroom temperatures. And we still said you can have a blazer and the polo shirt, which would have the school logo. Now, without consulting us, because of the school rebranding thing, the governors of the school just took away the polo shirt, and they left, you know, the kids with the jumper. And we're like, hold on, we would rather that you would have asked us. We would have preferred to keep the polo shirt. And the interesting thing about that school in Derby is they've gone with a polo shirt with a smart casual branded outdoor jacket, which is, they say, can be used all year round. and it's a very active uniform. And where I've started to move more from is, I just want the kids, as you said, Yasmin, to have a sense of not having to choose, because I don't like non-uniform days. For me, non-uniform days, bullying increased. If you're going to do uniform, you do uniform. If you're going to do non-uniform, you do non-uniform. Having anything between is very difficult, because it's the same as the trainers, not having trainers or trainers. Some schools are starting to realize you can fight the tide, skirts or not skirts, put everybody in trousers, then there's no argument. We had the same with a tie. We used to insist that our students had 5 stripes on their ties, and I used to spend an exorbitant amount of my time in the corridor going, shirt tucked in, tie, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stripes. Then we realized, what are we doing here? We're spending all our time in the corridor policing like, we are the uniform police. And what's the negative sort of feedback you're getting? You're constantly then just nagging at kids. Was what we did was we just got a clip-on tie. And part of me didn't want to do that, because part of me wants to teach kids how to do a Windsor knot. The old school traditionalist in me says, what is the world coming to when you have to, it's like giving slip-ons to a child instead of tying your laces. You sort of have to be careful you're not pandering to, oh my God, just have Teflon clothes because we can't be bothered putting same as nappy kids. We want our kids to be able to do a tie. However, going back to it, I call a tie a man shackle. I have now one of the male members of staff who's not wearing a tie to work, because I looking around me going, like, in what industry now do male teachers still wear a tie, but where do you see ties worn? Executives and CEOs who are probably on 500 grand a year, who are actually lording over teachers, are probably not wearing a tie, while teachers in the classroom are wearing a tie. So business, which education is becoming, are not wearing ties, while classroom teacher who are males are wearing ties. So I think we have to move with the times. I think you have to blend tradition with cost, and I do agree that the government have tried to reduce uniform costs by making uniforms, I think, more streamlined, less branded. You can go down to Asda, or you can go down to any other shop that you want is available, but you can go by a cheap retailer, buy a pair of trousers, a pair of, I had a student say to me today, it's the end of year 11, it says those shoes aren't appropriate, they've got bubbles in them, that they're trainers, or it's too late in the year to buy a new pair of shoes. Same kid with me coming in an un-uniform day and a £200 pair of Nikes, and I'm like, are you serious? You can't afford a 20 quid pair of shoes, and you've got £200 pair of shoes on non-uniform day. And that's what I really don't like with those non-uniform days, is you see the divisions, you see the tribalism, you see the kind of like the money comes out, and you see the kids showing off. And I had this conversation today with a bunch of children, say, do you want the American high school model, where it's kind of tribalism, you have to wear a certain clothes, or it's like, I love those children who all want to be different, those emo type children who all want to be different but all wear black.
Can I come in here? My big issue is that I am struggling with my sound. So every time a new speaker starts, that's it. I can't hear them, and I have to fiddle around until I can. And Maud, I haven't heard a thing you've said, because for some reason, all the fiddling in the world doesn't seem to be working. So I do apologise if I'm looking vacant and worried, and all kinds of IT stress kind of faces that I'm pulling. But I wanted to talk to you first, before I put my 2 pennies in, about Hachette Learning, because they are the publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. Also, I want to talk to you about Teachers Talk Connect, because this is back, our annual CPD and networking extravaganza. Join the TTR team on Saturday, the 14th of March in Manchester. Tickets are free. What are you waiting for? Head over to ttradio.org/connect 2026. And then finally, AQA, because AQA know teachers are the real experts in the classroom. That's why they work closely with teachers like you, combining your insight with their assessment expertise to create resources, tools, training and guidance that genuinely make a difference. They're the UK's most chosen assessment organisation, so chances are you already know their work. And as we head into exam season, AQA are focused on helping teachers feel supported and ready. If you want to find out more about how they're working with teachers like you, just head to their website, aqa.org.uk, to find out more. Thank you. I don't know, Maud, what you said about uniform, so I might be copying or saying things that you've said, or I might be going completely against what you've said, in which case I hope I can hear you come back. But I Googled what are the benefits. So to outline my feeling on this, when I went to secondary school in the 1980s, I went to the village secondary school, and there were 2 secondary schools in the city nearby, Chichester, and they all wore blazers and ties, and they looked so adult and professional. And at my school, we wore a white blouse with a blue cardigan for girls and a grey skirt, and that was the uniform. And I always, even then, I wished that we could wear blazers, I wished that we could wear ties. And in fact, when my children started school, uniform was a really important thing for me in choosing the school that they went to, because that's how strongly it made me feel. My school wasn't terrible, but it wasn't a great school, to be honest with you. And so the fact that I sort of put 2 and 2 together and kind of felt that the lack of uniform sort of added to that lack of sort of academic desire and sort of drive, I suppose. So I was Googling tonight, what are the benefits of school uniforms? Because sometimes you know something, but you couldn't list all the elements that make that up. And so they talk about equality, which I think has been mentioned, bridging the socio-economic gap. Community, that sense of community in school, that we all belong to one place. Simplifying routines. Now 3 kids all through the system, it is more simple. And as a parent, non-uniform, mufti day, whatever you want to call it, is an absolute nightmare. And when I worked in schools, we had children who didn't come in when it was mufti days. I remember a mum pulling her daughter into the classroom when I was in primary school because she was so distressed over it. My own daughter, when she went to 6th form, and they went from having a school uniform to having a dress code, so it was still dress smart, it took a long time to settle her in, because she'd bought all her clothes to start in September and it was stinking hot, and she didn't have summer clothes to start with, and it was so stressful, it really was. And I think that we don't really have that in the UK, so I can't say I've spoken to people whose children go to school without uniforms, but I can only imagine what a nightmare it must be. You know, just outside, I mean, even on the football pitch, they've got to have the right trainers. You know, are you sure these ones actually are too narrow for your feet? I have to have this make, and that it's really, really hard. So I think uniform is a bonus for parents. I think that for safety, they said, and this was an American site, interestingly, and they said that for safety it helped intruders to stand out. Now obviously staff don't wear uniforms, and I understand that, but it just made it more clear that somebody who you wouldn't normally recognize in the school wasn't a new child in the school, I suppose. So that could be something. It said about a focused learning environment, and I do feel that was the case when I was at school, that you didn't have a sense of belonging. You didn't have that sense that we were in an academic institution. It was just a place we went to hang out with our friends, and I'm not saying uniform was a part of that, but we seriously abused what little uniform there was. It's cost effective compared to fashion, and I know that people say it can be really expensive. And Yasmin, I did hear you talk about the blazers, and you said about how you used to iron on your school logo. Well, at the school I taught in, kids were coming in these little fashion blazers. So you had girls in fashion blazers, you had other kids whose parents had bought them sort of more standard style blazers. They would wear them, they would buy bright linings in them and then roll the sleeves up. And the worst thing was they would fade from black to purple across the year. So you had this sort of strange range of muted, faded sort of shades, and that didn't look smart. It really didn't. Skirts as well, skirts where they barely covered you know, the areas you want covered. Basically they were like little sort of mini skirts, stretch skirts, and they were a complete nightmare. And so even when you have a lax uniform or no uniform, there's no guarantee that it's that it won't be abused. Improved student behavior, that was actually proved. One of the things that they said in America was that actually when some of the schools switched to having a uniform, gang activity stopped. And one of the things was that in the gangs, they would wear identifying clothing that made them stand out as part of a gang, which of course we wouldn't see that here, because there's not a lot you can do with your uniform to amend that.
In the 1990s, some American schools actually, Clinton, they moved towards school uniform to reduce those sort of situations, because now there's a quarter of American schools actually have uniforms. So it's not completely universal in America that they have, completely. You always see in the, in the movies, American high schools seem to be, not uniformed, but actually there are many American schools that have moved towards a uniform for the leveling policy of trying to create social cohesion rather than identifying factors. And that was one of the, in the 90s, was a movement to move away from exactly what you were saying. So in some places they're moving towards uniforms, and in some countries they're moving away from uniforms. What's ironic, of course, is that Britain, the country that invented the uniform, has an education secretary who's basically advocating potentially loosening up the uniform to a point where we have boys going into skirts. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I'd be taking girls out of skirts, because there are times I am going, I need to not look, I cannot comment, I am a man, and I've had students say to me, girls, can you roll your skirt down? You shouldn't be looking. Well, I'm really sorry, I can't walk around with no eyes. And what do you want me to do? I'm really sorry, but it's back to this thing about if you're fraught and damned if you do, damned if you don't, but you're like literally going, what are we doing here, girls? Come on. And of course, I lead that. We had a female member of staff that we called the head of skirts, who tackled that quite, diplomatically, shall we say, because I'm not famous for my diplomacy sometimes. Maybe it comes with being Irish, certain age, but roll your skirt down. I'm sorry, I'm not making a comment about your appearance. Just roll the skirt down. End of. Same as the eyelashes that look like massive spiders, or they 10 years ago, they pointed eyebrows. Do my eyebrows look like? I just don't have the tolerance for it. I really don't. And it does my head in. And what it does my head in is the inconsistency. If you're gonna have a uniform policy, like everything else, have a uniform policy. And like everything else, is always people gonna go, they think they've got nails like they're Wolverine, for God's sake, and eyebrows like Roy Hattersley. I mean, we just, sometimes you look and you think, did you? I mean, is the Joker and the Batman coming into school today, or what's going on? I mean, come on, what are we doing here? So I do sometimes think that we have to have these awkward conversations and say to people, and then you get the parent going, what does it matter about their education? What does it matter? What do you say? And you're like, stop being so defensive. We have a policy. If you don't like the policy, go somewhere else. Come on. Because this again comes the problem, doesn't it? Of kind of like, let's make an exception for little Johnny, because, little Johnny, he's special. And my little Johnny, if he wants to wear those clothes, I'm going to let my little Johnny wear those clothes, because he's the center of the universe. And I'm the center of his universe, and my child, and you just get in that culture, and it's harder to enforce a uniform when there are people saying, I'm really sorry, but let's make the children more comfortable. So for me, you've got to be one or the other. You got to have a uniform. We say, that's it, no exemptions, don't care, wear it, don't wear it, tough. Or we just say, wear what the hell you want. You know what? If you are a 6-year-old and you want to come in wearing, a cat suit, go on ahead. You want to come in identifying as Hello Kitty? Fine. You want to come in as an orange? Fine. Come in dressed in what you want. Let's just all just come in. And you know what? I could come in dressed as whatever I want as well, because, we get that. I mean, it's great for staff members to just come in and dress. I'd love to come in and dress in my skirt and on uniform day. I'd love to come in, show my little legs off all the time like a PE teacher, but I can't. I love the way the PE department always seem to have their legs out in every school. It's not really fair, is it? Why do the PE department seem to have the rules for them? Every PE teacher I know, it's -5, and they're still walking around in a pair of shorts. How's that fair?
I'm so glad I'm not a PE teacher for that reason. I do not want my legs out.
But then to be a devil's advocate, isn't it also a bit mean as teachers that we can, kind of wear relaxed clothing in the summer, and then you've got like rows and rows of kids in a stuffy classroom sat in front of you in like a blazer and all sorts. No wonder why kids constantly ask to go to the toilet or to get water or to go to the fountain or to whatever, or even would be happy to get sent out, because at least they get fresh air in the corridor, or sometimes, but that's why I really liked that head teacher who just that school ended up being victims of like quite a massive pylon. The school, I can't remember, I think it was somewhere in the Midlands, and I think you mentioned it earlier, Brent. The
Yeah.
school where the head teacher basically tried to adapt the uniform to basically just be better for the children. And I thought that was a great idea. It's still uniform. You know, you're not making anyone particularly hyper visible. You're not making parents have to pay a lot more for non-uniform. Has all sorts of risks. You know, I remember in my childhood there was actually a school not far from where I lived at the time, but it wasn't the school that I was in, where on one day they just suddenly stopped non-uniform days for all of us. I don't know if it was every school in the borough, but certainly the schools in that area. And I think the backstory was on a particular non-uniform day, a kid who wasn't actually in the school ended up going into the school and I believe stabbed a child in that school. And so on safeguarding grounds, they basically just abolished non-uniform days. We never had one again in my school, and it didn't actually happen at my school, but it was just further up the road. From what I remember, like this is a long time ago, but I remember like that gave me a different kind of perspective at the time. But again, that's a tangent. I really liked what that head teacher did. I thought it was nice. You know, maybe not to everyone's taste, but that's not the point, is it? One thing I do really like about uniform, which Lucy somewhat touched on, I think it's really good for your cognitive load. I think the less distractions and the less things, oh, Lucy's gone, the less things you need to think about on a given day, the better it is for you and for your mind and subsequently for your learning. You know, I think if you wake up, I once read, and I don't know if this is just one of those random like, you know, tales on the internet, but I remember once reading somewhere that the guy who invented Facebook wears the same shirt or something every day. Maybe not him, but someone of his.
That was Steve Jobs. The
yes, I think somebody somewhere who did something basically just wears the same like shirt every day.
Einstein did that.
Honestly, the less you think about, the easier. And I actually think it's good for your brain. It's good for your cognitive load to have less to worry about. And I feel like uniform is just one of the great ways in which to do it. And I also think that it's no accident that a lot of the schools that have the best outcomes are also often the same schools that are like real sticklers for uniform rules. You know, the length of ties, or, you know, the lineups where your uniform gets checked. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with all of that, but I will say I just don't think it's coincidental. I think there is something to be said about order and routine and the effect it has on a child's brain and their development.
I think what I was trying to say, Yasmin, is I alluded to standards, and I think Lucy was saying the same thing about pride. It's the same about how much pride they put in their work, pride in appearance. And I like it when students turn up and their uniform is neat and tidy and their attitude is there. And I know that sounds very traditional, militaristic, and like those schools, but I do insist upon that myself. I insist that they tuck their shirts in. I insist that they're dressed appropriately. It's all part of that, I wouldn't say conditioning, but it's all part of that sort of, you're here to learn, you're in school, you adjust your behavior to your surroundings. And in this environment, you do wear these clothes these ways, you adjust to that. And I mean, maybe that's me being a bit behaviorist, Pavlovian, whatever you want to call it, but actually that works in an institution like a school, as provided it is consistently applied and supported and followed through. It falls down when you start doing the whole, well, you know, my child, and that's where it becomes under attack. And I think what that school is trying to do is that compromise of, let's talk to the community, let's see how we can have a uniform which can service the needs of the community by also being smart. I think that is clever what they've done, because you could say they have changed the uniform, but they have then kept a uniform, but updated a uniform for the 21st century. The kids are happy with it, means they buy into it. The parents are happy with it because it's not too expensive. It's practical. It also encourages active learning. So for me, I would satisfy my requirements of, you're all wearing the same, you're all buying into it, you're all proud of the uniform, you all feel invested in the uniform. I think what has happened to some schools, much like the relationship between parents and the social contract, is this conflict of uniform is inflicted on some children, and kind of they have to do it. And I think if you cooperate, and as you say, I was proud to wear my blazer when I went to 16 to a grammar school. I got a blazer, and I felt as a poor kid, I felt posh. I felt like I'm wearing a blazer. I felt like, I was like, the talented Mr. Ripley. It was great. I've got a blazer on. Whew, James Bond. Wow, I've got a blazer. Wow, look at me. I've got a blazer. And it did actually give me a sense of pride. I was wearing that blazer. I was like, I've got this little blazer, and wow, this is cool for me. I never had a blazer on. The last time I had a blazer on, it was my Holy Communion. There I was, getting money. So for me, it was actually a good thing to wear a blazer, because from a kid coming from my background, I looked at the kids who went to the grammar school, and they were like, wow, they look so much superior to us. And exactly what Lucy said. I think that's what some schools tried to do when they rebranded a couple of years ago. They come in, don't they? And they go, right, the school's failing. And then they go with a strict uniform policy, strict hair policy. And it is part of that, isn't it? It's trying to raise standards and change the culture. The problem with that is you got to bring people with you. And if they're not with you.
I think for me, uniform, like blazers need to go. I'll be honest. I think uniform needs to be consistent. But I think it should adapt with the times. Like, I feel like, I don't know, like, I just feel like it should be, breathable. It should take into consideration the changing weather and climate and all those kinds of things. I think children deserve to be comfortable. It's hard to like sit in a room with like 30 kids and like, every school has classrooms where everyone hates. I've had times where I've done cover and I've just thought, oh, not there, because it's like a carpeted classroom that's like in the sun for 8 hours straight, and like it's just so hot and stuffy, and I can barely hold a thought in my head because of how hot it is. And imagine, at least I'm on the teacher end, you've got kids. Do you know what I mean? I think given the fact that I think everyone benefits. All humans have the same like basic needs, right? But at the same time, like, we've got a rising number of children with disabilities. We've got a rising number of children with, I don't know, there's just all sorts of things, right? I just feel like I love what that head teacher did in the Midlands. And I think more schools should follow suit. I think there's absolutely a way in which you can standardize and make uniform really consistent and, hold children to high standards and reduce their cognitive load and do all of these things, but just make it more adaptable. But also, if schools don't, and just we keep the format that we currently have, I can't say that I'm mad about it either. I'm used to it. Everyone's kind of grown up in that. I don't mind if blazers stay, but I do feel like they are impractical and a bit unnecessary. But they are also really smart. So I don't know. It's just one of those things where I feel like I see both sides. But for me, I just think it would be good for clothing to adapt. And again, I just think there's so much, maybe hypocrisy isn't the right word, but I just think it's a bit funny sometimes how, schools as a teacher, like, for example, I've got a medical condition. I sometimes really struggle in the winter. If my classroom is really cold, I might bring in a shawl or just something to wear to keep myself warm, or, I might be in extra layers, or if I'm in my coat, or if I'm in lesson, I will always basically take those things off, even if I'm really cold, because I just personally feel like it's so unfair for me to police all the children about having all their coats removed, in class, whilst I stand there with mine. So I'm conscious to always take things like that off. But then in summer, I'm able to dress somewhat more casually than they are. And so I don't know. And then, kids, there's that classic complaint about PE teachers where they're like, we're stood there in the cold in a t-shirt and shorts, and they're stood there in their massive like puffer jacket telling us what to do. And whenever kids say that to me, I always say to them, well, yeah, the point of exercise is you're clearly not doing as you're told, because you're meant to be running around, you're in PE, and, when you run around, you're going to warm up, so that's why you shouldn't be wearing your coat in PE outside and things like. I just kind of defend teachers when kids say stuff like that. But I don't know, sometimes I just feel like, is every member of staff in a school always also adhering? Are they always adhering to, I don't know, the same things that they apply or expect from the children?
I think there's not so much of a debate, because we all agree, to be fair. It's good for safeguarding. It's good for avoiding showing how much money your parents make and making the children who might not be able to afford brands feel like they belong to the school. It's easier to get ready in the morning. So there's a lot of positives in having a school uniform. Now, there's an issue I noticed. It's the fact that we have 10 million pupils in the UK. So that's, if you spend £100 on a school uniform, that's £100 million spent on it. And I'm just wondering, could we make sure we are not wasting that money on buying things that are not eco-friendly? Because we all are concerned about, you know, the amount of polymer and plastic in the ocean. Most school uniforms are made of polyester. Couldn't we just promote carbon neutral uniforms made in the country, maybe not processed and fabricated in China? I think these are questions we should also raise when a head teacher makes a decision on a uniform. It should be ethically produced. There's an irony of having a uniform produced by children in a sweatshop in Bangladesh, and then our children wearing it in school. So I think we should make sure we are not encouraging selling and buying products that are not ethical. So it would be great if we had legislation on this. And I think the government is always missing out on these occasions to promote locally produced organic cotton, or, you know, you mentioned the fact that children are uncomfortable in the summer. You have sometimes 30 children sweating in polyester shirts. We all know what happens when you're in these kind of rooms. The smell can be really outrageous. So I wish we had more possibilities as teachers to raise these issues and to make decisions in the running of the school. Because if we notice this, we're not the only teachers. Why can't we also be part of the decision making in the schools about uniform? Because we could also say, oh, we have neurodivergent pupils who hate labels that bother them. We are the ones who spend time with the children. I feel like we should be consulted as well as the children when we choose or design a uniform. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've got so much to say all of a sudden today. I completely agree with that. I've got students who I actually never make wear a tie because of, you know, things like neurodivergence and their struggle with wearing a tie. It doesn't necessarily bother me. You know, I feel like it's a good thing. I think uniforms should adapt to the changing needs in schools. And I think there's a way to kind of both standardize things and, you know, create that sense of belonging and all those things that are positive about uniform, but at the same time respect people's dignity and, you know, just adjust things to accommodate individuals. But, you know, what you were saying, Maud, I just think one thing I know in England is I just feel like teachers aren't respected. They're not, everyone makes decisions, well, not everyone, but people make decisions about teachers. And I don't know, I just feel like the media denigrate teachers. You know, there's just so much that happens. There's a lot of anti-teacher, anti-school stuff. Like, I've got a TikTok page, right? I have in my TikTok bio that I'm a teacher, and you wouldn't believe how many comments I have saying, can I just ask, like, why you went into teaching? Like, you could have done anything. And it's like, sorry, does everyone think, like, do people think that no one actually aspired or wanted to be a teacher and everyone's just kind of here by accident? It's a reflection of
it's become a culture, hasn't it? It's become
a culture. Yeah, it's I don't know.
But talking of culture, I mean, one of the things that was picked up on was obviously Bridget Phillipson's sort of insistence that, yeah, if boys at 5 or 6 years old want to wear a skirt, let them experiment. And the thing with school uniforms is that they are embedding gender symbolism. So it's a kind of, you know, Barbie and Ken. It's a kind of like, you know, playing with dolls versus Action Man, you know, me with Tonka toys and the girls with things. And I know I have got 2 daughters, and one of my favorite T-shirts one of my daughters wore was, you know, a blue T-shirt with girl on it. And I was always keen. My mother used to always buy pink stuff, and I was like, why? Can someone explain to me why pink is girl and blue is boy? Where does that nonsense come from? And when does that start? Because I don't, you know, why does girl have to be pink? Why does a boy have to be blue? Well, gender reveal, it's pink or blue. Well, why not purple? Why? I don't get it sometimes, the way we culturally start to do that. And schools do reinforce that sort of that stereotype, the traditional gender identities. And I go back to me saying about the girls with the short skirts. You know, why not boys in short skirts? You know, if I saw boys going down the corridor in short skirts, would I be more kind of horrified by that? Maybe that's my problem with, and maybe the girls are right. Maybe the teenage girls are right. Maybe I'm the one with the issue. You know, they should be allowed to wear short skirts. Maybe it's societal. But the problem we've got is that we in schools then reinforce that, because boys wear trousers and girls wear skirts. Male teachers wear ties. Female teachers don't wear ties. And of course, if you deviate from that, it's kind of like you're the problem. And that maybe Bridget Phillipson. We talk about the Bridget Phillipson thing. What she's saying is, at what age do we say, yeah, boys can wear skirts? What will we do if some of our students come in? I think some students did do this. Some boys, I think, protest. Did they not, about uniform? Did they not come in wearing skirts to sort of say, look, we want shorts. Why can't we have shorts? So didn't they come in all wearing skirts? And the school was kind of like, well, we've got no policy on boys wearing skirts. And you think, I thought, fair play to those lads. I mean, why not? I mean, there's no rule against it. So what do we think about Phillipson's comments about, if a boy rocks in at 6 years old wearing a skirt? What does the school do about, do they say, fine, you want to wear a skirt, you go on ahead. You want to go and experiment and play, go ahead. Or is that opening the door to then a parent sending their child and saying, my child identifies as Action Man, and he's come in dressed in army fatigues? Because at 6 years old, I would have dressed myself as Tom Cruise from Top Gun and thinking I was a fighter pilot, you know what I mean?
Well, this is the problem. I mean, we've got two arguments that you've made in one. One is, do we let boys wear skirts? And yet you've said, why do girls have to wear skirts? Do you see what I mean? So there are the both of those arguments oppose one another. I'm all for choice. It is not equality to say if everyone wears trousers, then it's a fairer system, because that's girls. I wear leggings, but if I wear those with long tops. I wouldn't be able to wear them as part of a uniform with a blouse and a blazer or whatever. Do you see what I mean? I wear it with long tunics, which are not school uniform. For some people, actually, for some girls, they only want to wear skirts. For some girls, actually, skirts are the only thing that they feel comfortable in, because they fit properly, because they're not stretched around their legs and things like that. That body image is so important, and it is still more important to girls than it is to boys. And girls' trousers and clothes tend to be fitted and tailored and cut and boot cut, and so and they're all different styles. Boys' school trousers are just boys' school trousers.
It's changing. I have never seen such a peacock culture with our boys. They are. It's no way.
Hairstyles and haircuts.
Oh, yeah.
The amount of grooming.
Eyebrows. I had a boy today, and he said he spent £50 on having his eyebrows done. And I'm like looking at him going like,
facials. There's all sorts of things now. It's just, I don't know, everything's changed. Can I tell you guys a random story?
Yeah.
Like what Brent said reminded me. So my mum, grew up in Somalia and then moved. She lived between Switzerland and Italy, and she had no concept of gender colors or anything like that. Like, it didn't exist where she grew up, right? And she had my older brother in Switzerland, and my mom's favorite color is baby pink. So she said she bought a baby pink pushchair. She used to buy him baby pink t-shirts and all sorts. And she said she'd constantly get stopped in the street. My mom speaks both French and Italian. She said she'd constantly get stopped in the street and ask, what's her name? Is it a girl? What's her name? And she said, I just always used to think, why does everyone think that he's a girl? He's very obviously a boy. Can they not see this as a boy? She thought it was really obvious, but she said it was only when she moved to England that someone actually told her, hang on, genders have color, because I was born after my brother. So, she had a boy and a girl. So that's when it was, and I was born in London. So that's when finally people actually told her that, we put boys in blue and we put girls in pink, or we buy boys these toys or these things and we get girls that kind of, which obviously isn't necessarily the case now, but that is that's basically how she found out. And she said when she reflected on it, everything kind of made sense to her. But she bought a baby pink pushchair because it was her favorite color, and not because she thought everyone would look at my older brother and think that he was a girl because of the color that he's in. Yeah,
But we don't, well, I don't think that there is, I mean, you will always find lots of girl stuff in mother care and places like that. Other baby shops are available, in baby pinks and baby blues.
blazers. Sorry, I thought
No,
you said
no,
blazers.
no, the baby blazer, that's right, newborn
Oh,
blazer. Get them started young. But no, but you do get a lot of stuff like that. But actually, most parents, I mean, I've seen like mums with bright pink baby pushchairs with pink blankets and pink this and that, and I think,
You're
oh, it's
reliving my
really over the
trauma.
top. I had a daughter third, and I never went for all that sort of candy pink kind of colour. I did tend to go for more girl type clothing, and I did go for more boy type clothing. And I will die on a hill for the fact that girls' coats are not practical in the same way that boys' coats are not practical, and their shoes are not practical in the same way that boys' shoes are not practical. And that annoys me, because you can make it in pink, but you can put all the pockets and all of the extra zips and all of those things on a pink coat as much as you can a boy coat, so, or a blue coat. So for me, that was that sort of bothers me less, to be honest with you. If people want to put their children in whatever color, I'm not really bothered. If you want to send a boy,
everything's beige now. Everything's beige now.
Top.
Well, yes.
So that's it. That's the one. That's the one.
Or greyish. I've just had a moment of PTSD, which thankfully my mother's not listening to this. 1985. I'm 7 years old, and it is the 80s. And my mother, for my Holy Communion, I'm 7. There I am. Bless me, Father. And I'm dressed in a pink, bright cardigan. My brother is dressed in a bright lemon cardigan. We look like a pair of highlighters. With our bowl haircuts, which our auntie used to cut by putting our bowl around. We're both blonde, and you've got these two little blonde boys with bowl haircuts in bright, luminous pink and yellow. Now, one of the things my mother used to do when I say, hello, Mum, here's my girlfriend, your potential future daughter-in-law and potential mother of your future grandchildren. And the first thing she'd always do is go, have a look at the photograph album. And of course, she'd be drawn to going, look at this cute photograph of me with my little bowl haircut, dressed in a bright, luminous pink cardigan, as it was the style back in the 80s, because everything back then was luminous. I remember in the 1980s, Adam and the Ants wore makeup. I mean, Kiss rock stars wore that. What was Bowie doing? You always do that with people saying, look at fashions over time. People have changed fluidity and they've changed dress code. Go back to the ancient Egyptians and tell me that the pharaohs were loosely men wearing skirts, or the Romans were wearing skirts. I mean, we've had this before, haven't we, about what cultural norms is with dress. So going back to Phillipson, was she wrong really to say that, and did it need the moral outrage of why a 6-year-old would like to wear a skirt when David Beckham, we were talking before, David Beckham was wearing a sarong in the 1990s and caused all sorts of ructions, didn't he, when he wore a sarong? And let's be honest with you, as a man, a heterosexual man, I may add, he looked pretty sexy in that sarong back in the day. Did I have the courage to go and get myself in a sarong? Not a chance, because I'm not David Beckham.
But, you know, at the end of the day, I just wonder whether the government, whoever the government is of the day, as in, you know, whether it's the Education Secretary or whoever, whatever government, whatever flavour, I don't think they need to tell schools whether boys should be able to go in a skirt. I think is perfectly within a teacher's remit, within a school's remit, to say, oh, he's going through a phase, or he's experimenting, or he's trying something. I think we have far too much government poking their noses in, telling teachers and schools what they should and shouldn't do. Back away and let the schools deal with it. Because when those boys went in and did the protest about wearing shorts, the school had a choice to make. They didn't go, oh my gosh, we better ring the government and ask them what they think we need to do, because that's not how we work as a society. We don't run to the government for everything, but they should not be micromanaging what schools are doing at the same time. So that bothers me, and it only bothers me because we've got somebody from the government telling schools what they should do. Let the schools make a decision.
Yeah, I think we should have more democratic principles in the way we run schools in the UK and in other countries, to be fair. But I want to go back to something you were saying about makeup and boys being maybe more into facials and hair products at the moment. I think it's related to social media and the amount of influencers who are showing, you know, their skincare routine. I noticed that my daughter didn't have a phone, and then she got a phone to go to school. I was against it, by the way, but her dad was pro gadget. So she got a phone in year 7. And as soon as she started having a phone, she wanted to buy cosmetic products. She never looked at cosmetic products before. And I had to rein her in because I'm conscious of the chemicals that there are in cosmetic products, and also the cost. And also she's beautiful. She doesn't need any makeup, to be fair. So it's a constant battle between trying to have a wholesome, healthy, dress code, and then advertising coming via their phones. So I don't know if you noticed that, but this is something I'm really aware and worried about.
Yes,
I
yeah,
agree.
I completely agree. I think social media plays a huge part in it. There are child influencers, like 13-year-olds, who are getting brand deals, and they will be on TikTok sitting at their, huge dress up table, whatever, in the morning, where they'll be like, hi everyone, welcome to my 17-step makeup routine. Here's my hyaluronic acid, here's my glycolic acid, this is for this and this is for that. And I mean, as an adult, and I am a scientist, I know a lot of these things, and even still I find it so scary. I'll watch it and I'll think, what is this? Is this something I should be doing? Is it, well, I don't mean if it's necessarily kids, but I mean just anyone talking about skincare. It's really easy to feel like you're missing out on something that's maybe important, or that there's information or knowledge that you're lacking. If you're a child, I know at my age, I know it's important for me to understand my own skin, to learn to do things that benefit my own skin, and all of those things. But children don't know that. It took me a long time to get to where I am, to understand myself and be comfortable in my own body. I couldn't do that at 13. I didn't have that. A lot of my comfort and self-esteem was external. It came from the things around me or what people said to me, and which is very typical of children. And so all of this pressure on social media, where a lot of the time the people that are even talking about skincare or starting off makeup tutorials with a bare face often have a filter on their face. Now I've got boys who openly, I couldn't imagine this when I was at school. I teach boys who openly talk about plucking their eyebrows, their hair care routine, the leave-in conditioner in their hair, like their skincare routines, their face masks, all of these.
What I was told today, Yasmin?
Sorry?
I had some year 11 tell me, God, Mr. Poole, you've grown a beard over half term. You look so much older. I liked you without the beard. I went, why, gee, thank you. If you were me, would you shave the beard? And he was giving me all sorts of advice and going, yeah, the beard makes you look more distinguished, more like a teacher. Yeah, funny. Yeah, it goes, funny that I look like a teacher, do I? Yeah. Well, I'm dressed like a teacher. Yeah. Well, that makes me a teacher then, doesn't it? And he goes, yeah, but the beard makes you look, wiser, does it? Do you think this makes you look more sage and wise? And he was telling me basically that I look older, and I'm walking away going, do I go home and shave my beard tonight? Because I'll check myself and thought, go in, catch yourself on, you know what I mean? But you're right. And I've seen, doing supervision around, the boys' toilets to stop vaping and everything else. And they might have preening and combing, but then remember, look, let's be honest. Generations were exactly the same. We were exactly the same. I wanted to look like Axl Rose back in the day. I wanted to look like John Bon. I had a John Bon Jovi. I thought, I'll have a John Bon Jovi haircut. Brilliant. We all did that. I even had the mullet. A mullet.
I think the thing is, though, we didn't have the influences, did we? And I think it's a very genuine concern. Young girls but you didn't have other children coming up onto your screen on your phone all times of day and night telling you this stuff, and basically being these companies that make all of these products, they are making a fortune out of people's self-esteem and people's needs. I'm 52. I don't use anything on my skin. I put a bit of toner on in the morning, and that is it. I don't use creams, lotions, potions, nothing. My daughter, 19.
You're well preserved for 52.
Somehow,
personally, my beard is out of 10 years apparently.
Well, somehow, but I do think when you've got children using these acids and things on their skin, it's deeply concerning. We need to get children off social media. I totally believe that. I think it is an absolute. I do. Sorry, Yasmin, but I really do.
That's a conversation for another day. But
It
yeah,
certainly is.
I'm not against it. I just found it funny. I thought you were going to say we need to get these products, regulated, or but then I just had social media.
But they are regulated.
I mean, they are. But I mean, yeah. And one thing I did want to say as well, the different, Brent, you were mentioning Bon Jovi. Like, I feel like a difference there as well is these are regular people who are just viral on the internet, right? These are regular kids sat in their room, in their regular bedroom, in their regular school uniform. They have a level of relatability that is actually quite alarming.
It was always more
I'm watching that thinking, I need that. I've seen children in primary school have skincare with acids in them on their Christmas wish list in primary school.
Yeah.
And I get that.
As an adult, I don't use any acids.
Every generation has the moral outrage of a previous generation.
That's true as well.
And you could have the 1980s version of Teacher Talk Radio dressed in their shoulder pads with a Lady Diana haircut, saying, "Oh my gosh, golly, the children today, this Madonna would be absolutely in her fishnet tights and like a virgin. It's disgusting." And you'd have the 60s version going, "Oh, I watched the Beatles last night with their combed over hair." The 40s version going, "Clark Gable, oh my gosh, he said, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." Every generation has that poison. We were told rock music and Ozzy Osbourne would corrupt us and the devil and the satanic stuff. And kids always dressed a certain way. Rockers, punk rockers, it's always that subculture.
But JB, this is not the same, because nowadays you have also people who inject themselves with lip fillers. And again, you're going to think I have a fixation on plastic, but we are becoming the plastic generation. We have plastic in everything, in our face, in our food, in umbilical cords. It's not just a fashion now. It's becoming. We're changing the way we are, maybe our DNA, by doing this. It's more serious than just a trend, I think. The body dysmorphia that you see. I see women walking in the street, with these lips, and I see them younger and younger. I think it's really scary the way we see beauty. We don't appreciate the natural form. We just always want to make it hyper or bigger or more plasticky. It's worrying, I think.
I agree, but
the MTV generation was told the same. I'll watch these pop videos, and then we have to be careful that we are not sort of the moral guardians, and we've gone into the transition of our life. And as teachers, I've noticed that myself. As a kid, I was rebellious. As a kid, I was pushing boundaries.
It's not the same, Brent. Like, things are not the same. Like, what Maud is saying is right.
Nothing's ever the same.
What people are injecting themselves with now didn't exist. I don't know. It's just
because they were popping pills and doing all sorts.
I agree with you on the principle of, yes, every new generation will have something to say. I mean, every older generation will have something to say about newer ones or ones that come after them. I do agree with that. But I think two things can be true in the sense that what we now have surrounding children and adults and just everyone is also seriously concerning. There are so many things where we're yet to know, the cancer risk, they're carcinogens. There's all sorts of things that we will only unfortunately find out as the next generations grow and see what happens to them, including my
kids popping pills in the 60s. We had smoking. I started teaching 22 years ago. It was Smoker's Corner. Now it's vaping. Things do move on. It was natural highs in the 2010s.
Can I move on?
Sorry, Brent.
With the adverts. Can I?
Brent, I have never seen you. I have never seen you being so fatalistic, like, ever.
No. Look.
It's gonna happen if you're going to die. Brent said we're all going to die.
I think we're all agreeing that we have to adapt. And I do. Look, I'm a parent of two young children. It does concern me, but I also have to give myself a reality check and say, yeah, this is kids being kids. Kids will always be kids. And there was always kids who wanted to look good. There was always kids who were like, it was the Grease thing, Danny Zuko and tell me more. Come on, we've always had the greasers and the horror.
But we can challenge things. We can challenge things without thinking we're better than others.
Girls in short skirts. Hello, mini skirt. Britain invented that one too.
Mute Brent. Mute him.
Can I just come in and just talk about Hachette Learning, because they are publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hachetteLearning.com to explore the full range of titles. And then AQA, because they know that teachers are the real experts in the classroom, which is why they work closely with teachers like you, combining your insight with their assessment expertise to create resources, tools, training and guidance that genuinely make a difference. And as we head into exam season, AQA are focused on helping teachers feel supported and ready. So head to their website, aqa.org.uk, to find out more. And I'm sorry I had to interrupt you to get that in, but I really wanted to talk about our show sponsors before we close up.
I'm done now. Sorry, intrusive thought. I was meant to say that out loud.
Well, look, it's been good. It has been good and lively, and we're going to have to start stretching to 2-hour shows. And then when 2 hours isn't enough, we'll go on to 3 hours, and it'll all be good. But I'm conscious that most of us have got to get up tomorrow. You've all got to go back into the classroom. I sadly don't anymore, which is very sad, but I still keep my hand in, and I've really enjoyed tonight's discussion. And I'll get on top of this male grooming stuff, because it was starting when I was in teaching, but I'll have to have a look and see how much worse it's got.
This boy today, I swear to God, I couldn't stop looking at those eyebrows, because it was like, I felt like going, FAB, Virgil. It was like he really got 2 caterpillars on his eyes.
You've got to go and teach him tomorrow. You'll be thinking about this now.
And I was like, and he was so serious. I'm like, what have you done to your eyebrows? He went, well, I have them shaved. I was like, how much you spend on that? Oh, £50. And to be fair, I complimented and went, that's a good set of eyebrows. And he goes, yeah, I paid for them. And I kept looking at them going, why am I seeing Thunderbirds? Why am I seeing Thunderbirds? Go. And of course, he had no idea what Thunderbirds. A certain generation of people would now go, what does he mean by Thunderbirds? Go Google Thunderbirds. But that's the thing. He's under a pressure, and he seems like a nice young lad. It's not the type of student or lad I would have thought that would have done that. But it shows.
You're just uncool. Sorry to cut you off there. You're just uncool. His peers.
I'm already trying any longer. I haven't cut my hair in a year. Cut my hair in a year. They keep telling me, cut your hair. And I'm like, nah, I'm not bothered. I'm going for the 1990s footballer look. Give me girls. I mean, I've given up on my appearance a long time ago, shave or not shave. Don't bother with it. I mean, call me old-fashioned, but if you judge people by their appearance, I just don't. I'm done with it.
I think the long hair suits you. I think it's. But anyway, you're just uncool, because I bet his peers like really rate him for that. I bet he got like I feel like
aura, Riz.
Oh yeah.
The
Dave, I wasn't sure you'd understand.
Oh yeah. He's got aura points and he's got the Riz. But that's that point I do take away, that they are living in a very different world. And that male pressure is something uniquely different. And there was always pressure on lads to look a certain way and to be physical, of course, and to have that sort of, and you see that alpha nonsense and this beta nonsense and all this stuff that comes through the Tate stuff and the Tate sphere and the bro sphere. And there is a lot more pressure on the lads. And in fact, if you look at, likes of eating disorders, 1/4 of people with eating disorders are boys. And that percentage is increasing year on year because the pressure has been applied. And I have noticed the subtle change in boys now, sort of following trends a lot more at a lot younger age as well. But then also parents doing things like, kids who are like 5 with a top knot, and you're going, has the kid asked that, or is that the parent doing that? It's like, you see some babies and you're going, oh, Jimmy Mac, what are you doing? Why has your child got 16 earrings and they're only 2 years old? I mean, that's not cultural. I mean, so you're getting people sometimes you're going, what are you doing? But then I could easily say this thing, what was my mother doing dressing me in a pink cardigan in 1985? We can all criticize and say that's the culture, but we have to move with the times a little bit as well. Or in my case, go back to the 1980s and have Bon Jovi, David Beckham in a skirt. Maybe we should do that tomorrow. Should I go in a skirt? Should do that. See what happens. Should I go in a skirt and see what happens? Will I be told off?
Take a pair of trousers just in case. in case you get told you're not coming into school dressed like that, and then you can get changed.
I
You
wonder
don't have to
what,
go home.
I wonder what would happen if I walked into school tomorrow in a skirt. I walked in a short skirt as well, with big eyebrows, 17 pairs.
You'd probably go on a support plan the same day.
Yes.
Oh no! I'd probably turn around and say, "What? I'm a bothered?
You'd
you on
get a
about?
day in isolation. Can you imagine? Like, for the kids, that's the worst thing. For us, a day in isolation, read my
Big
book.
remark.
Oh, yeah.
You're sending me to isolation. Great stuff. Give me all my mark and can I go and sit and have isolation? What do you think of the punishment the children get? You know, we keep on going. I took a shirt. I mean, I saw a thing of that saying, never is the most futile gesture in human history. Took a shirt and took a shirt. We still do it. So solution, just have a solution where they don't have a shirt. Have a polo shirt instead. So I think sometimes we just need to probably adapt, don't we? I think we're all saying, maybe she had a point of Phillipson about allowing that adaptation for the modern world. And we just have to live in the society we're living in now. We can only hold on to certain traditions and maybe blend them together. But here you go.
I don't want to open a thingy, but that's lowering standards. And I don't think we should lower standards just because people don't like the standards. But we have to stop. I know, Yasmin, we have to stop.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We have to carry it on.
Thanks to everyone who has tuned in. And
It's still with us. That's what
outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real